What happens when a nation spends 20 years building an invisible fortress, only to hand the enemy the exact map needed to destroy it in a single night? In the dark waters of the Persian Gulf, a trap was set, but the hunters just became the prey, and the consequences will echo across the Middle East for decades. If you want to understand the hidden military realities that the mainstream media misses, take a second to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and share this video with someone who needs to know the truth. The Strait of Hormuz is not just a body of water. It is the jugular vein of the global economy. Roughly 20% of all the oil consumed on the planet passes through this narrow 21-mile choke point. Whoever controls this strait holds a knife to the throat of global commerce. For over 2 decades, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has understood this better than anyone. They also understood a harsh and unforgiving reality. If they ever tried to fight the United States Navy in a traditional ship-to-ship naval battle, they would be annihilated in a matter of minutes. American carrier strike groups, guided missile destroyers, and advanced stealth fighters operate on a level of conventional warfare that Iran simply cannot match. So, Iranian military planners stopped trying to win a conventional war. Instead, they built a ghost network. They spent billions of dollars and countless hours excavating massive underground missile cities beneath the hard sedimentary rock of the coastline. They built hidden harbors on Qeshm Island. They constructed elaborate radar arrays and early warning stations on remote outposts like Sirri. They created a layered, multi-domain kill zone designed to do one specific thing: bleed the United States Navy economically until the cost of maintaining a presence in the Gulf became politically unsustainable. Their strategy relied entirely on the element of surprise and the discipline of electronic silence. You cannot strike what you cannot locate. For 20 years, the IRGC kept their most dangerous assets hidden in deep bunkers and their radars turned off, communicating only through secure, hardwired lines. They built a fleet of thousands of small, fast attack boats, armed them with anti-ship missiles, and trained them to swarm larger vessels. They manufactured legions of cheap, disposable suicide drones. They positioned mini-submarines in the shallow, noisy waters of the strait to lay mines and ambush surface ships. It was a brilliant asymmetric doctrine. It was designed to make the Strait of Hormuz too dangerous for any adversary to transit without Iranian permission. But a strategy built on hiding only works as long as you stay hidden. And this week, under immense political pressure and a collapsing ceasefire, the IRGC made a decision that cannot be unmade. They decided to launch a coordinated multi-vector attack against 3 United States Navy guided missile destroyers transiting the strait. The USS Truxtun, the USS Rafael Peralta, and the USS Mason were moving through international waters under a mission of maritime freedom. When the launch orders went out from the coastal batteries at Bandar Abbas, and the fast attack boat swarms surged from the concealed harbors of Qeshm Island, Iran thought they were springing a trap. They were not. They were walking into one. To understand the sheer magnitude of this mistake, you have to understand the invisible war that was happening long before the first missile was fired. For weeks, American electronic warfare aircraft, specifically the EA-18G Growlers, had been flying patterns over the Gulf. They were listening. They were waiting for the Iranian network to wake up. The American targeting database had a lot of general information, but it lacked the precise, real-time electronic signatures of the hidden Iranian command nodes. They needed the IRGC to turn on their radars. They needed them to communicate. They needed them to light up the electromagnetic spectrum. When the attack order was given, every hidden system across the Iranian coastline activated simultaneously. Anti-ship missiles launched from shore-based ramps. Drone swarms lifted from coastal positions. Fast attack boats roared out of their caves. To coordinate this massive assault, Iranian radars illuminated to establish targeting locks. Command nodes transmitted orders. Electronic emissions flooded the airwaves. In a matter of minutes, the American Growlers recorded, mapped, and filed every single frequency, every radar location, and every command center into their targeting database. The IRGC had just spent 2 decades building an invisible fortress, and in 5 minutes of combat, they handed the United States the exact blueprint to destroy it. The attack itself was a spectacular failure. The 3 American destroyers did not take a single scratch. Their Aegis combat systems tracked every incoming threat with cold, mathematical precision. Standard missile interceptors destroyed the aerial threats miles away from the fleet. Close-in weapon systems shredded the few drones that managed to penetrate the outer defensive ring. MH-60. Seahawk helicopters lifted off the destroyer decks and systematically dismantled the fast attack boat swarms attempting to close the distance. The Iranian drones fell into the waters of the Gulf like dead weight. The attack produced 0 American casualties and 0 damage to any American vessel. But what the attack failed to do physically, it accomplished strategically for the United States. It provided the ultimate legal authorization. By launching an unprovoked attack on American warships in international waters, Iran had just categorized any American response as lawful self-defense under international law. The trap was set, the database was complete. The legal green light was flashing, and as darkness settled over the Persian Gulf, the sky above the Hormuz coastline filled with the roar of American fighter jets. We are about to break down the exact military coordinates and the devastating payload that just erased 30 years of Iranian strategy. If this level of deep, unfiltered geopolitical analysis is bringing you value, do me a massive favor and tap the subscribe button. Leave a comment below telling me where in the world you're watching from. Let's keep building the smartest community on YouTube. What followed was not a proportional tit-for-tat retaliation. It was the systematic architectural decapitation of the Iranian naval command structure. The United States military did not just strike back. They dismantled the very foundation of Iran's ability to wage war in the Strait. The operation was massive in scale. 5 aerial refueling tankers were airborne simultaneously from Al Dhafra Air Base in the UAE, creating a continuous fuel bridge in the sky. This allowed American fighter jets to loiter over their targets for hours, executing sustained multi-wave strikes across multiple target complexes. The USS George H.W. Bush and the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier strike groups launched their air wings into the fray. F-35 stealth fighters slipped through the airspace completely undetected, while EA-18G Growlers electronically blinded whatever was left of the Iranian radar network. The first primary target was Bandar Abbas. This is not just a port city, it is the nerve center of everything the IRGC's naval strategy depends on. It houses the main headquarters of Iranian surface operations. It is the operational brain from which every fast attack boat swarm. Every mine-laying operation and every anti-ship missile battery has been directed for years. The large Iranian frigates that survived the early phases of regional tensions were commanded from this location. The logistical depots that sustained the maritime harassment campaigns were concentrated here. The hidden silos of silkworm and sunburn anti-ship missiles, along with the guidance centers for the C-801 systems, were all anchored in this complex. American precision-guided munitions turned the logistical depots and command centers of Bandar Abbas to ash. The coastal launch ramps were vaporized. The missile guidance centers were struck with such accuracy that the hardened infrastructure simply ceased to function. The radar networks that scanned the strait were shredded. In a matter of minutes, the command brain that had been directing the IRGC Navy went completely dark. The heart of Iran's Hormuz strategy stopped beating. The second target complex was Qeshm Island, and this is where the true brutality of the American response became clear. Qeshm is the largest island in the Persian Gulf, sitting directly inside the Strait of Hormuz. For 2 decades, the IRGC had transformed this island into a massive military fortress. Beneath the surface, they had excavated dozens of kilometers of concrete tunnels into the hard rock. This was their underground missile city. It housed retractable silos for Shahed 136 kamikaze drones, hidden launchers for Ghadir anti-ship missiles, and bunkers for Qadr ballistic missiles. It was designed to survive conventional airstrikes. Iranian commanders had publicly boasted about this underground city, calling it their greatest strategic asset. The United States military answered that boast with bunker-penetrating warheads. Precision-guided JDAM bombs struck the entrances of the underground tunnel networks, collapsing the rock and sealing the facilities from the inside out. The hidden radar bases providing targeting data to the island were obliterated. The Shahed drone launch infrastructure was eliminated before the inventory could even be activated. Qeshm Island had functioned as Iran's stationary aircraft carrier, a forward staging platform that gave them reach across the entire navigable channel. By sunrise, that platform was gone. The underground missile city was entombed. The third primary target was Sirri, home to the Shahid Rabari naval base. This facility is the least understood by the public, but its operational significance is massive. Sirri is the eastern gateway to the Gulf of Oman approaches. Every commercial vessel, every oil tanker, and every cargo ship approaching the strait from the Arabian Sea passed within the radar coverage of Sirri first. This base held the most critical intelligence collection capacity in the IRGC's defense architecture. It was the early warning system that told the IRGC what was approaching, when, and from what direction. Without the data from Sirri, the fast attack boat commanders were operating blind. Without it, the mine-laying operations could not be coordinated. American fighter jets struck the coastal defense systems and radar nodes of the Sirri complex with systematic, terrifying patience. The intelligence nodes went down one by one. The radar coverage collapsed entirely. The eastern gateway that had given the IRGC complete awareness of every approach to the strait was transformed into a massive blind spot. When the fires at Bandar Abbas, Qeshm, and Sirri finally died down, the geography of Iran's military power looked fundamentally different. The command brain was destroyed, the forward staging platform was entombed, the early warning gateway was blinded. Supporting nodes at Bandar Kamir and Manab were also addressed in the same operational cycle. The kill zone was dead. The map of the Middle East has literally been redrawn in a matter of hours. If you're finding this breakdown eye-opening, hit that like button right now to support independent research. Share this video with a friend who thinks they understand modern warfare, because what just happened changes everything. The aftermath inside Tehran has been a chaotic mix of confusion, denial, and panic. When the explosions began along the coastline, the initial assessment inside the Iranian capital was deeply flawed. Just days prior, the UAE had absorbed a massive Iranian missile and drone barrage that sparked fires in the Fujairah industrial zone. When the Hormuz coastline lit up, the Tehran administration initially calculated that the UAE had launched a retaliatory strike. But the UAE Defense Ministry watched the events in total silence. When the reality finally set in that the power destroying their infrastructure was the United States Navy, the Iranian regime's information management apparatus went into overdrive. Iranian state media, including Fars News and Tasnim, executed the only information operation available to them. They portrayed the massive explosions as routine air defense exercises. The same outlets that had published victory celebrations when the attacks on the destroyers were launched were now describing the destruction of their own military facilities as planned, controlled activities. The Iranian population, sealed behind a severe internet shutdown that restricted their access to the outside world, was the target audience for this propaganda. But this lie is not sustainable. The destruction at Bandar Abbas, Qeshm Island, and Sirri is highly visible. It is physical. Iranian officials and citizens in those coastal regions can see the smoking craters and the collapsed tunnel entrances. The gap between the state media narrative and the observable physical reality is growing with every passing hour, breeding deep internal instability. This military disaster is unfolding within a highly volatile diplomatic context that makes the situation even worse for Tehran. Just days before the engagement, a summit in Beijing produced a joint declaration between the United States and China. The core message was clear: Iran can never have a nuclear weapon, and the Strait of Hormuz must remain open for global energy commerce. China, historically, a major purchaser of discounted Iranian crude, effectively co-signed American red lines. Chinese financial regulators immediately instructed banks to pause loans to sanctioned Iranian refineries. The diplomatic isolation that the maximum pressure strategy was designed to produce had just taken its most significant step forward. Into this tightening noose, the IRGC launched their failed attack on the American destroyers. Instead of demonstrating strength and forcing a diplomatic accommodation, the attack demonstrated a catastrophic gap between Iranian military claims and Iranian military reality. It proved that their asymmetric swarm doctrine, built on the premise that cheap weapons could overwhelm expensive American defenses, completely failed against the integrated system designed to defeat it. Every government watching this outcome, from European capitals to Asian markets, updated their assessment of the conflict. Iran is no longer viewed as an untouchable regional power. They are viewed as a severely degraded state. The diplomatic mechanism for resolving this crisis remains on the table. A one-page memorandum of understanding, delivered through Pakistani diplomatic channels, offers Iran a 30-day negotiation framework. The terms are strict but clear: immediate opening of the Strait of Hormuz, complete restraint of proxy forces, a halt to nuclear program activities, and a sharp cutoff of funding for militant networks. The White House has been incredibly direct in its public communications. The message is that if Iran does not understand it has been militarily defeated, it will be hit harder than it has ever been hit before. Inside Iran, a dangerous internal conflict is brewing. The IRGC command structure, currently hiding in their remaining bunkers, does not want to accept these terms. Accepting the deal means ending the wartime conditions under which their domestic political authority is at its absolute maximum. However, the civilian government understands the brutal financial mathematics of the situation. The economic pressure is running at an estimated $500 million per day. The central bank knows that refusing the terms will produce an economic collapse far worse than any political concession. The military reality on the ground leaves Iran with almost no leverage. What remains of their capability in the strait is a scattered mosquito fleet of fast attack boats hiding in dual-use civilian ports. They have some portion of their Shahed drone inventory stored in facilities that survived the strikes, a few mobile ballistic missile launchers, and mini-submarines operating in the shallow waters. These are still real threats. A fast attack boat with an anti-ship missile can still cause damage, but these assets are now completely disconnected. Without the command center at Bandar Abbas, without the forward staging on Qeshm, and without the early warning radar at Sirri, these remaining forces are blind, deaf, and entirely uncoordinated. The United States is not leaving anything to chance. B-2 stealth bombers have been running training missions from Whiteman Air Force Base, replicating the exact flight profiles needed to carry GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators. These are the ultimate bunker busters, designed specifically to destroy deeply buried hardened underground facilities. The message being sent by these flights is unmistakable. The strikes that just decimated the Iranian coastline were only the first phase. If the IRGC refuses to negotiate, the next phase will target the remaining 30% of their infrastructure, including the deepest bunkers where the leadership is currently hiding. Iran now faces two choices, and they are the exact same choices they have faced since the first American strike package went in. They can accept the terms on the table, end the conflict, and address the nuclear and proxy questions simultaneously. Or they can refuse and watch the next wave of the military campaign erase whatever is left of their armed forces. The IRGC hijacked a commercial ship recently, and they are running military exercises around Tehran, trying to project an image of defiance. But the reality is that their command structure is trapped in the dark, calculating their next move while the financial pressure mounts and the diplomatic walls close in. History offers a grim parallel. In July 1988, after the United States Navy decimated the Iranian fleet in a single day of combat, Ayatollah Khomeini accepted a ceasefire with Iraq. He famously described the decision as being more bitter than drinking poison. He drank it because the alternative was watching the complete destruction of his country's military. Today, the IRGC command structure is facing that exact same bitter cup. The financial mathematics are breaking them. China is pulling its support. The underground missile cities are sealed shut. Bandar Abbas is a smoking ruin. Sirri is a blind spot. And the B-2 bombers are in the air. The deal remains on the table, but the clock is running out. The IRGC will either sit down and sign the agreement, or they will find out what the full, unrestrained power of the United States military actually looks like. The other hand is still loaded. The veins of Iran's Hormuz doctrine were severed in a single operational night. The drones fell into the sea. The destroyers transited without a scratch. The kill zone is gone. And as the sun rises over the Persian Gulf, the Islamic Republic is completely, utterly powerless to stop what happens next.